For this plenary session, the topic is a dialogue on actuaries, leadership, and global capacity building. This session will be chaired by Mr. M. Karunanidhi, Vice President, Chief Actuary, Reinsurance Group of America, Middle East, who will be joined by two panelists, Mr. Amit Kalra, Managing Director, Swiss Re India, and Mr. Rajesh Dalmia, Senior Partner, EY, India. With limited time and this rich and diverse in experience on stage, let's delay no more. The floor is yours. Sir, please join us on stage. Mr. M. Karunanidhi, the chair of the session, Mr. Amit Kalra, and Mr. Rajesh Dalmia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying. I know it's lunch time, and we'll try and keep it short. And good news is there's not going to be a presentation, I suppose. So we're going to talk about actuaries, leadership, and global capacity building. It's a very broad topic. We thought we'll approach it in two parts. One, we'll talk about actuaries and leadership in general, and then we move on to the leadership aspect in the context of global capacity building. We heard Mr. Pandey, our chairman IRDA, talking about actuaries being proactive leaders. So maybe we'll pick from there, talk about a little bit on what are some of the attributes when you think of transitioning from a technical leadership to a general or commercial leadership. Maybe I'll just pick your thoughts in terms of some of the qualities that you would sort of expect and people to pick up as they move from a technical sort of focused role to more commercial and business leadership roles. Maybe we'll start with Amit.
Thank you very much. So it's a pleasure to be here. So I guess the main topic is, what's the transformation journey, on the leadership curve for an actuary, starting from more of the technical subject matter expert to more of a thought leader. I guess one of the key elements from my perspective is courage, right, and being bold. And this, I personally believe comes from two dimensions. One is the ability to take personal risk. Right, so usually, the conventional mode as professionals grow is like going more from a depth standpoint, and there's nothing wrong in that, right? So I just want to highlight that. But the point is, how do you really look at leadership in maybe from a simplistic perspective, a T-shaped leadership, right? So while the depth is super important, but the ability to really transcend into getting a broader view of the business functions, playing global roles, playing, frontline roles, responsibility, engaging with the customers. So it's not that, whether, you are starting as an actuary, you have to always stay in the actuarial technical career path. What we see today is, not just in India, but at the global level, more and more actuaries are taking up CEO roles, COO roles, Chief Underwriting Officer. And this I'm talking only at the highest level, but there is a very, diverse variety of roles that can be played. So one is about you as a leader. Are you ready to take that bold step, personal risk, and get out of the comfort zone? The second perspective of boldness is more in your professional capacity, yeah? Because as an actuary, yeah, we all are, trained more from a conservatism perspective, right? So how are you looking at more of the protection? But the problems that we are seeing in this world and how insurance, reinsurance can help, there you need to have a more solution-oriented approach. Things will not be super clear. You will not have 100% of the details. But as an actuary, are you ready to, take the first steps, even with 30, 50% of the information, and be iterative and be solution-oriented? And that's where, we can actually make this society more resilient, right? So that's how I would highlight courage and boldness is a key topic.
Thank you, Amit. I think well put. And yeah, actuaries, by virtue of training, we tend to sort of look at risk, right, all the time, and how we can measure and mitigate them. I think you are referring to the courage in terms of being able to look beyond the risk and take advantage of the opportunities that they present. Kind of, you probably can say that like you're looking beyond the numbers and sort of thinking outside the box. So, and then in terms of maybe Rajesh, we could touch upon the decision-making aspect of it. I think, again, by virtue of training, right, we like data, we tend to do a lot of analysis, and sometimes we get lost in the details, right? Mr. Kamis was referring to the fact that we're building complex models and then which nobody understands. So when it comes to decision-making in the face of uncertainty, as well as knowing when to stop analyzing and start making the decision, right? I think that's kind of a unique skill set, I suppose. It's very important from a business leadership perspective. So in that sort of a decision-making journey, how would you sort of see that actuaries faring in terms of making decisions while they are so obsessed with analysis, right? It's not kind of at some point in time, the analysis leads to paralysis, and then you get lost in the data and numbers. So how do you sort of take yourselves out of that view and then decide when to stop and when to start making decisions?
Hello. Yeah. So at first, let me highlight, Karuna, that most actuaries end up, at least in their lifetime, they end up at a chief actuarial CXO role, okay, which I would say, if you compare with any other profession, it is probably very high percentage, okay. So we do end up being a leader from that perspective. I think we Hello. Yep. So, hello. Yeah. I think we are talking about going cross, being a CXO, CEO, being leader for other functions and things like that. And that's, I believe, where you would probably may not see large number of actuaries there. Okay, there has been, if you look at even LIC, there have been multiple chairmen. You will recall Salunke, Diwan, Narsimhan, a lot of them really ended up being a chairman or MDs, right? So it's there. It's not that we have not been, I would say, in large number we have not been able to reach there, but we are there. It's only a question in terms of, I would say, what exactly we need to do when we need to jump from A ship to B ship, right? So from chief actuarial, how do you go and become a CEO? And I think what Amit said, you have a depth in one, but you need to probably broaden your horizon, look at more aspects of the business. And I guess that's also position where you need to take quick decisions. And you are right in terms of that. We as an actuaries usually look at so much data. We probably want to wait for more data before we take a decision, and probably we are risk averse by that nature. And that's where I think there are only few who have been able to cross that barrier, give up the technical role of an actuary where you wait for the data, you wait for the certainty before you take a decision around that, to jump to a point where you only get 20% data but you need to make a decision, right? And you need to take the responsibility for that decision. And I think that's risk averse to risk taker. And it's a big jump.
Yeah. Thank you. And maybe the other aspect is communication, right? So how do we sort of take the stakeholders along? And it's always hard to know how much is too much when it comes to communications, right? And speaking the language that all the stakeholders understand and appreciate what we are trying to do. In that context, because it's always been a bit of a criticism, right? Maybe if you look at it as a self-criticism as well, and from an actuarial fraternity, again, the fact that we are more technically oriented. So when it comes to dealing with complex subject matters, when it comes to communicating things, right, the complexity lies in making things simple, right? So how do you see kind of, as you kind of build up your technical skill set, I think the communication angle, right, we're looking at the picture from different angles and, looking at, the language that others would understand. How do you see actuaries developing that even further, right? I think we've made some inroads, and but I guess there's a way to go from that perspective. What we are hearing from the speakers this morning as well, just to make sure that we need to have all the stakeholders in the ecosystem are able to appreciate what we are trying to do.
Yeah, no, I think this is like a common topic across all the technical job families. I will not single out actuaries, right? See, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about, while of course we all like our work, but it's not about being over passionate with your work, right? So I think you have to be a bit emotionally detached as well. And how can you make things much more clearer, simpler for the people whom you are engaging with, right? So you also have to understand that while of course we are building the models, but while the model can be very complex, yeah, but you have to relate that complexity and look at what is the outcome and the business impact that we are talking about, and really take the stakeholders along with us, right? So, and as we are doing it, right, I think one of the fundamental thing is that whether we have seat at the table. I think that becomes very important, and it's not like that, things will come on the platter. So of course, sometimes as per the role that you play, the organization will, of course, bring you in the right platforms, give you the right opportunities. But as a professional, each of us have to also build our own personal credibility and really ask for, that seat at the table. But this is still task number one, yeah? So your job is not done. So once you have a seat at the table, you have to do justice to that seat and be vocal and have a voice at the table. Right? Where you are very open in sharing your perspectives, you are challenging the status quo, you're not just going with the most popular view, right? And you have to be heard. So, and things still don't stop there, right? So while you have seat at the table, you have voice at the table, you have spoken, the next level is how are you influencing the decision making? So basically, you have to really aim for influence at the table. You start from seat at the table, speak up, and influence the business decision making. Because if you know if the company is, about to take a wrong decision, and while you have shared the views, how efficiently are you able to influence the outcome which is in the best interest of the stakeholders? I think that's about the articulation, the communication piece, that we have to really focus. But if I take a few seconds here just to overall summarize more from a leadership perspective, and maybe let me do it in 4P method, right? So, many a times in our daily roles that we play in our professional world, is very much focused on one P, yeah, which is perform, which is execution. That I have a given responsibility, I have a role to play, and I'll just deliver, and I'll give the best to that. Nothing wrong, but this is just the start. I think there are other P's, yeah, that you all have to consider as well. One is the purpose, right? What's a broader purpose that you are looking at from an organization standpoint, from a society, from an industry, and your own individual purpose? What matters to you the most? And I think that's how, if you start the why part, why you are doing what you are doing and what you're expected to do, will be a game changer in your own thinking. And the next P then you have to focus more on is how do you prioritize? Of course, you know, all through our life, we've been told do multitasking, etc. I mean, multitasking is the number of topics, but at a point, you know, you have to be efficient doing one task, yeah, and really, you know, give your full attention to that. So you have to also prioritize. You cannot do 10 things. Our brain is not equipped like that. So you have to focus on what are your top 2 or 3 topics that you have to look at. And then look for the fourth P that I will say, which is more about planning for the future. I think in the previous sessions, we've talked about technological advancement, Gen AI, picking the right problem. It's not just about the problem. It's also about the opportunities. Yeah, there is a reason why the insurance penetration in India is so low, and what can you do to come up with innovative solutions, innovative ideas which do not exist as of today? Are you preparing for the future? And that's the fourth P. And if you really bring all these together, that's kind of, a kind of a leadership framework which can actually help, in the journey.
Thank you, Amit. I think you touched upon the speaking up aspect as well. I think that's very critical for any profession. And maybe switching to the global capacity building. And India as a country and the outsourcing industry, we have come a long way, right? From call center, and then we started with business process outsourcing, then we have a knowledge process outsourcing, but a PPO, KPO, and then also APO, and the actuarial process outsourcing. And we've seen a long journey, and then we come to a stage where it is one important sort of a part of our actuarial ecosystem, I would say, in terms of creating job opportunities for students and actuaries as well. Maybe Rajesh, if I may start with you in terms of how do you picture the current landscape as far as the global operation centers or global centers of excellence, whatever we may call it, and what do you see in terms of future for that?
You are right. We have come a long way from the days when we started, I think 2002. Genpact was the first one to do that. And from that day, those days where Genpact started, I think the first one, to when I look at today, I think number of organizations have proliferated significantly. And more importantly, number of students and actuaries. So in those days, qualified actuaries in the country were also less, and I would say in the GCCs, there were very, very few. Now you go to GCCs, you will see number of qualified actuaries. In EY itself, there used to be only one qualified actuary at that point in time, and today if you look at in EY, I would say more than 30 plus qualified actuaries are there, right? And large number of them are working for global clients. They are not working for India. For India, we have so in my guess, gut feel says 65%, we haven't done a complete survey of it, but 65 to 70% of Indian actuaries are working for GCCs or global clients in some way or other. It's not necessarily that they are working in a captive GCC. They may be working in a consulting like EY and still supporting global clients, or they may be working in sitting here in India, direct employment with the global, but working in India. Okay, so there are a lot of such things also has happened during the COVID also, where people are sitting at home but working for global and taken the contract. So all that has happened, and all this is I would say it's a pretty good from the profession perspective. I remember in 2014, 15, 13, when we were used to struggle how to get actuaries who have cleared 6, 7, 8, 9 papers for a job, and today you try to look for, you don't get, right? So from that perspective, I think it is pretty good.
Thank you. Amit, maybe if I pick your thoughts on, we heard Mr. Joshi, Secretary of Financial Services, talking about India as a country, and we also hold the potential to become a global actuarial hub. And I think maybe to some extent we are already a global hub, and we've seen variety of work being done here across the globe. So you see, from thinking like a fast forward point of view, like projecting out a little bit into the future, what are some of the aspects you would consider very important for these setups to sort of move up in the value chain? Right? You may be doing certain type of work today, can we kind of move up in the value chain? Or we can do more of that nature, and then also moving a little bit away from what you may call it a core actuarial into more on the analytical side of things as well.
No, thank you. So let me first just add on to what Rajesh already highlighted and give a very strong positive outlook for all the actuaries and colleagues sitting in this event. I think India is one of the unique countries in the world where, you know, we talk about twin engine from a political perspective, but literally India is a twin engine from an actuarial standpoint. And not many countries in the world have that kind of twin engine. One engine is pure economic and insurance growth outlook, right? So I think the penetration in India right now is 4%, while the world average is 7%. And India's economy is expected to become third largest in less than 10 years' time. So if you really bring all these factors together, the insurance sector will continue in its high growth trajectory. So massive domestic insurance industry at play, which is great. On the other side, India is the market leader across the world with 50% plus market share when it comes to global capability building, right? And I think that's where many of the insurers, reinsurers, brokers have built up those capabilities in India. And as Rajesh was highlighting, today the reality is such that 65% of the actuarial roles are based in the global setups, which is fascinating. But in both the cases, it is expected to grow, which is fantastic news for all the actuaries. Now, in terms of possibilities on the actuarial side, I mean, it is endless, yeah? So if I give you a few examples from a Swiss Re standpoint, 50% of global life and health valuation for Swiss Re Group and 50% of actuaries are actually based out of India. And it's a massive portfolio. Yeah? I'm not supposed to share those numbers, but I can still talk about annual premiums of 20 billion, right, which is getting generated. And if you look at the holistic book, what does it mean? Then we are talking about the entire IFRS implementation, both in terms of the leadership as well as the enablement and the entire value chain. So in reality, yeah, except for, certain aspects of actuarial roles, most of the actuarial roles can be based out of India, and it's like a chicken and egg situation. If you have the experienced, qualified actuaries and professionals, those global roles will also move to India. And that's how the unlocking will happen. That's how the glass ceilings will get breached, not just vertically, but at the same time horizontally. So I personally am very bullish on India, yeah, both on the domestic landscape as well as the global landscape, which is like super good news for each of you.
Thank you. And yeah, we have come a long way. We talked about in terms of evolution of this back office or outsourcing industry, but it has its own challenges, right? So if you have to look at some of the key challenges, right, and what sort of expectation as leaders of such setups from the actuarial community, right? Of course, a lot of people, it's a supply. From a supply side, do you see constraints? Or we have enough supply, and or there's a quality side, there are certain aspects, specific skill sets that you expect people to sort of develop to be successful in terms of their contribution to these setups?
So yes, there are always challenges. It's not an easy journey. It has been, I would say, kind of ups and down always, right? So in terms of supply, I would say we have been able to supply pretty well. I don't think there are always challenges in terms of getting good quality people and all that, but if you look at the numbers, you go by the numbers, we have been able to supply, right? There is still a demand and we need to still produce more, which there is always a requirement and we need to produce more. So there is that supply constant in terms of we have to do more work around supply. In terms of challenges, I would say there are cultural differences which is there. One needs to account for that. There are language at times is a difference. Again, one needs to account for that. Time zones are different, right? There are advantages, disadvantages both. Time zones, it's an advantage because somebody can take 24-hour work environment, but it's also a disadvantage from the perspective that people want to have some overlap. It's not that if you are working for US, you probably need to change your working hours to ensure that there is some overlap there, right? So there are advantages, disadvantages, or challenges, I would say, which is there, and one would have to bother about that, right? Organization needs to be slightly flexible. People also needs to be flexible. It's not that you can have a rigid mode on both the sides. So, but yes, there are, I would say, challenges which have been there. There is always a challenge when you are working remotely that regulatory change which happens in the regulation in the country. So, for example, in India, regulation comes up. Everyone is talking about it, you get to know of it and all that. But when you are working in an offshore, you have to be double careful. You have to read little bit more to understand what is happening in that market because you are away from the market, you are not in the market. So those are aspects which I would say are slight challenges in terms of that because you are not in that market, but you are working for that market, right?
Thank you. Amit, any final thoughts in terms of or advice to aspiring actuarial students who want to build a career in these sort of setups? What are your expectations from them?
Yeah, no, I think all the challenges which Rajesh talked about, and of course, they are there at any point of time. You know, I guess then the question for us is how are we mitigating many of those challenges, right? Because the upside is massive. Yeah, because if you really look at insurance industry in India, you know, a lot of changes have happened only very recently, right? So we have last 20, 23 years where a significant transformation is ongoing in the insurance industry, but we can learn a lot from the global markets, right? What's happening in Europe, Americas, Asia, what are the best practices, what are the experiences, how are regulators looking at different things, what is the customer experience or expectation, how is technology expected to play a key role. And I think that's where the opportunities are there to get that kind of a global exposure. Yeah, to really look at learning in a totally different dimension. I know it's a long career path for actuaries to qualify, yeah, given the number of exams, but that is just the end of the beginning. You know, I mean, the real journey actually starts from there upon. Yeah, what's the experience, how you learn from your peers, how are you looking at innovation and impact, not just at a small scale level, but in a transformation level. And I think there's plenty to really look forward to. And to accomplish that, I think you don't have to look at leadership, you know, from a managerial standpoint. I think gone are those days of supervisory managerial aspects. Yeah, that's why we use the word leader and not manager. I think leadership comes from every seat, each of you. The only thing is you have to take ownership, you have to be accountable, and really take those risks, as I shared earlier, both at the personal level and professional level. You'll make mistakes, but you learn from it and you'll evolve, you know. And as I said, fantastic growth outlook in front of us, but we are the ones who have to take those steps forward and, you know, really live that potential.
Thank you, Amit. I hope we've been able to throw some food for thoughts, but the real food is waiting outside. Maybe we'll take a couple of questions before we wrap up. Are there any questions, comments? Yeah, please. Get a mic, please. Yeah.
It's not a question, but actually I would like to add my experience to the topic. So actually it depends on the personal liking. It depends on the personal liking and the personal mindset. That means one wants to climb the ladder. Otherwise, one may remain focused on his area. So actually, what I have found that if you want to actually climb a ladder, don't do the same thing after 3 years. So within 3 years, your roles will change. If you want to actually, and then means for that, you have to unlearn to learn the new role. And I actually see, it's maybe for myself, the Modi is actually example. When he was Chief Minister Gujarat, he did establish himself, and then he started unlearning and preparing himself for the greater role. And in his actually third term as Chief Minister, he established that when he became PM, then from that, after that, he started focusing on the world leadership, and within actually minimum time, he became the one of the best known leader in the globe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
These are my personal actually.
Thank you. That's very valuable.
Thank you. So I work very closely with Rajesh, so the question is not for Rajesh. So Amit, I'm directing this question to you as a part of the actuarial transformational agenda. We did speak about actuaries being risk averse and so on and so forth. What do you think can we do differently to make sure that the next generation that comes along is not risk averse? I've had multiple conversations with chief actuaries, appointed actuaries across the globe. And this is the second part of my question actually, where they do not know what India has to offer as an actuarial profession. So two parts, what can we do differently for our people, and how do you think we can navigate the challenges around not having known the actuarial profession in India?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So let me maybe address the question one with a example, real example, yeah, and some of the folks will be here. So a decade ago, when I used to interact with recently qualified actuaries, and I used to challenge them because I was very tech-savvy analytics driven that time, and say, hey, there's a data science field which is developing fast, and there is actuarial. I used to sense a lot of resistance where people used to say, hey, no, actuarial is very unique, special, while data analytics, data science is there, but yeah, each of us have space. In fact, last week, I was having lunch with recently qualified actuaries, and I again asked a provocative question, Gen AI, will it disrupt the actuarial profession or number of actuaries that you actually need? And the response was, no, it will amplify. We are gonna embrace this technology. So to me, what I'm trying to highlight, the mindset change itself is phenomenal. And I think this is very much required, because if actuaries are closed in their thought process, you're gonna stagnate. If you're gonna stay ahead of the curve, you're gonna embrace new technology, changes which are happening all around us, then it's a totally different thing, because you can actually do a lot more, because a lot of other mundane tasks and activities will be done by technology or different processes. Now, to your second part, which is more from a leadership perspective, what more, if I got it correct, right? I think from a global capability center perspective, I can give that lens, we have constantly challenged the status quo every 2-3 years, right? So which means what was good, yesterday, it cannot be good today. So for us, I mean, literally, we actually had that project, good to great. And then I was challenging the actuarial leaders on the ground to say, hey, great has now become good. Okay, what is the next great that we are talking about? And this is not just from an internal standpoint, but the alignment has to be established with the global CXOs, etc. And I just have one mission, how do we break glass ceilings, right? How do I crack the chicken and egg situation, where more and more confidence comes? And honestly, that is coming because one of the, ex-Swiss Re colleague just asked, Amit, how's the setup? Okay, you have grown this much. Today, I mean, the actuarial setup in Swiss Re is 400 plus, and out of which we have 40 qualified actuaries. And we have a tremendous growth opportunities, career pathing, because you can literally look at the diverse roles here. So I think that's a journey each of us have to take. I always say that don't expect anything to come on your platter. You have to really earn, you have to keep on knocking the doors, and that's the ownership that each of us have to take. It cannot be a responsibility of just one individual. It has to be a collective.
Thank you. I think we will leave it there, and please join me in thanking Amit and Rajesh for their time and effort. And thank you all for patiently listening. We'll close the session with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to request Mr. Kulin Patel to kindly present the mementos.